Hello and welcome back to Read Becca. We are going to pretend that I am not sweaty and gross. I have been running around the house, following everything appropriately as we jump into the October spooky season. I had a bunch of cleanup stuff to get done and switching over decorations stuff. Got up some little window clings of some leaves and acorns and owls. And so we're fallified now. And I'm also gross. But you can't tell through the video, so that's great. But we are perfect timing for my fall October spooky TBR. And am I actually going to be reading any terribly spooky books? I don't think so. I'm not a big spooky reader. I might jump out of my lane and grab one or two later on in the month. I have some in mind, but I'm not going to put them on the official TBR for now. So what am I doing with my October TBR? I'm actually going for non-traditional monsters. And I think some of these might have some kind of gruesome elements, but I don't think they're like total horror type books. But they definitely do have these paranormal monstery elements. So I thought that was great. And they all have kind of similar covers. So that is an interesting element because that wasn't really intentional. I had two of these in mind previously. And in fact, actually, we'll mention Friday night, I checked my library because I had books in mind already for this. I knew they had been sitting there at the library at a nearby branch, not my usual branch, but a nearby branch. And they were still sitting there after the library closed on Friday night. I get there on Saturday. Neither of the two books that were sitting there at the branch were actually there anymore. They were checked out. So I'm going to have to place holds for all of these. So I don't have any physical books to hold up, but I can easily get these. None of these have wait lists on them, so I just have to get them transferred. But that means I'm holding up a Kindle for pictures so that you can see these glorious covers. So the first one is Briefly A Delicious Life by Nell Stevens. And this is going to be like a historical fiction. I think this is the only actual historical book. It's kind of in the 1800s, so it might be sort of Victober appropriate, and it takes place in Majorca though, so I'm fudging it a bit, but it's the right time period. And this actually follows a ghost. So we're following this 14-year-old ghost girl who died in childbirth at a monastery, weirdly enough, and she is there as a ghost when George Sands and her lover, Francois Chopin, show up for a vacation, I guess, and she kind of falls for George Sand, who's this novelist that is very non-gender conforming. She's very uproariously wears pants and smokes cigars. And so I think that that's also going to be a thread through all of these books. There's very much like feminist themes and bucking the gender norms. So as I said, I think this is historical and is the only one that's historical. So this should be interesting, and I don't think spooky at all, but it does have that ghost element. And then the next one that I have was on my radar, but not one I really planned to get to until the lovely David from Shelf Possessed, who I'm missing their channel activity. I'm assuming they've been busy with getting back to school and whatnot, but David did a author interview with the author of A Certain Hunger by Chelsea G. Summers, and that author interview completely sold me on this book. It is a cannibal novel. So this one is all about a food critic who is this 50-year-old woman that loves food, travels all over the world for food, and specifically I think Italy is a major part of this. I'm really looking forward to the setting there. And she also kills people and cannibalizes someone at least once. So I don't know too much about the plot other than that it has these major gorgeous setting and food elements and this kind of non-traditional story of a woman being empowered in certain ways by this act. So I don't really need to know more than that. I've heard the author talk about it a bunch with no spoilers and really was totally sold on it. So yeah, I want to get into this one. And the final of my three non-traditional monsters is Women Eating by Coda. And yet again, we've got a very unusual setup because this is a contemporary setting with a young woman who is biracial and an artist. And she's trying to find her identity and where she fits in the world as an adult for the first time. Like, she's just kind of moving out on her own. And she's also a vampire. So she has a passion for food as well. So there's another food element here where I think there's going to be a lot of talk about food, but she can't eat any of it because she is a vampire and can only eat blood. So I'm very curious to see how that plays into this. And I think, again, that kind of setting and feminist elements about her gender are going to really play into this. So those are my three non-traditional monster novels. I think, as I said, the covers are all pretty similar, which is weird, but I do actually also have a non-traditional monsters section on my physical TBR shelf. So am I TBRing any of those? No, I am not. Of course, that's how I always work, but I am going to give myself the challenge of reading as many of those as I possibly can. I don't have any specifically in mind to start with, but weirdly enough, my physical TBR shelf, I'll try and link the video running through all of it down below, but it's four shelves, 4 layers, and I grouped books by theme on the shelves. And so that particular shelf has 2 themes. One is non-traditional monsters and the other is animal protagonists. And those are both things, like, these are the majority of the fantasy books that are on this are in that shelf, and yet I haven't been getting to any of them. I've only read 1 book from that shelf, so it's the least read of all of my TBR shelves for this year. So that's weird. So I need to really chip away at a few books on that shelf, I think, and making that a priority in between these 3 is, I think, going to be a good idea. So that is what I'm planning to get to for this month. I have some other ideas. I do want to kind of try to participate in Victober a little bit. If I finish my current tome, I think I'm going to, again, fudge and do like the period versus actual Victorian literature, and maybe go for the 3 Musketeers, because that's another tome to start. We will see. So that's very up in the air, and if I have time, if my reading speeds up a bit. Yeah, so lots of ideas as always, but this is what I'm thinking for my TBR, these 3 books. I think that's manageable, so very excited to get into this month's TBR. That is it for me. I hope everyone has their own wonderful spooky October plans or Victober plans to share. I'm looking forward to everybody else's TBR videos. Thanks so much for watching.